Good morning, good morning. All right, the missing ministry of the risen Christ. We are on, is this chapter 4? It is chapter 4. Chapter 4, One Eternal Round. So last time, my mind was completely exploded by Jonah Barnes pointing out that there's a lot more temple symbolism in stuff that we didn't know. Or I didn't know, at least. And so, especially talking about, it was mostly talking about praying in circles and etc. And I love the phrase, the dance around the cross. That's amazing. So, this chapter, One Eternal Round. Quote, "Why do they endeavor with such pains to conceal and to cloak whatever they worship, since honorable things always rejoice in publicity, while crimes are kept secret? Why do they never speak openly, never congregate freely, unless for reason that what they adore and conceal is either worthy of punishment or something to be ashamed of?" Caecilius Natalis, 197 AD. All right, here we go, getting into the same arguments we deal with now. TLDR. In the wacky world of... Sorry, I read that wrong. In the wacky world of word wrestling, circles become churches and Christianity becomes a cult. The Roman authorities did quite a number on Christ's original ceremonies, and what's left of them is unrecognizable. Joseph Smith Jr.'s Eucharist prayer originates from Adam's original blood sacrifice, and no matter how the Nephite editors tried to hide it, we can detect the circular prayer at Bountiful during the risen Lord's ministry. Yes, indeed. Since nothing else important was happening at the time, Warner Brothers released a cartoon called A Wild Hare in the summer of 1940. This film introduced an animated rabbit named Bugs Bunny. In the film, the clever rabbit mocks the hapless rabbit hunter Elmer Fudd as a poor little Nimrod. An evident Bible scholar, Bugs was comparing Fudd to the biblical figure Nimrod, whom the author of Genesis calls a mighty hunter. The public missed the reference, however, and just thought Bugs was calling him stupid. Moses is no match for Bugs Bunny. Webster's dictionary today lists Nimrod as Nimrod, 1, slang, idiot, jerk, 2, Nimrod, a descendant of Ham represented in Genesis as a mighty hunter. In the spring of 1940, Nimrod meant mighty hunter, but a cartoon rabbit changed its meaning almost overnight. So the meaning of words is a fickle little thing. That's very true. Instead of just 1 year, what if a word was repeated over the course of 1,000 years across multiple languages before popular literacy? How quickly would the word mutate? In the case of the words church and cult and Eucharist, they'd evidently change quite a bit. And if Satan is invested in perverting their meaning, words can come to mean their complete opposite. We left off with the restored prayer circle that Jesus first introduced into his apostles and then democratized during the 40-day ministry. The final piece of that true manner of prayer is the secret clasps exchanged by patrons. These were so sacred that almost nothing is written about them. But at the heart of the prayer circle is a crowning gesture, which is literally the crux of the whole thing. Pun! Thankfully, modern discoveries can help piece together the central gesture of the dance. The heart of the restored prayer circle will show what the gospel story is, in the words of Joseph Smith Jr., one eternal round. He gets the phrase from the King Follet Discourse. Orante. Last chapter, we explored Joseph Smith Jr.'s prayer method, which matches the risen Christ's method in Judea. On nearly every point, no biggie, just another Tuesday for Joseph. Still, our reconstruction is focused mainly on the perimeter and not on the center, the heart of the Judean saint's sacred ring. The destination of the whole ritual is much deeper, and it centers around literally one final climatic gesture called the Orante. From the Latin word orare, meaning to pray, the Orante is shown clearly by Paul, who wrote to Timothy, quote, this is from 1 Timothy 2:8, by the way, with Latin from the Vulgate. I will therefore that men pray, orare, everywhere, lifting up holy hands. Paul instructs us to leave levantes puras manus, or lift up pure hands. This gesture was the mode of Christian prayer until the customs or various cultures seeped in to alter it over the centuries. Well before Paul, the Orante is found in several places in Psalms. Dude, again, this is what I'm talking about. Why is it that Psalms has all of this stuff too? Because this is what's still like making me scratch my head, is that here in the Old Testament, I'm thinking you got the sacrifice of the animals, you've got the big altar that is like a giant barbecue, you've got the shewbread, etc. I'm like, okay, anyways, but I guess it's surprising to me, only because I don't know. I've never. Our temple ceremonies has nothing to do with animal sacrifice, so I was always like, I don't know. I guess I've never seen or understood what it would look like from the Mosaic perspective, from the Moses perspective of a temple rite or ritual and how close they are there. Anyways, let me keep going. So well before Paul, the Orante is found in several places in the Psalms. Psalms 28:2. Hear the voice of my supplications when I cry unto thee, when I lift up my hands toward thy holy oracle. Psalm 54:2. Hear my prayer, O God, give ear to the words of my mouth. Psalms 63:4. Thus will I bless thee while I live. I will lift up my hands in thy name. Psalms 141, 1-2. Lord, I cry unto thee. Make haste unto me. Give ear unto my voice when I cry unto thee. Let my prayer be set forth before thee, as incense, and lifting up my hands as the evening sacrifice. Psalms 143:6. I stretch forth my hands unto thee. The Orante pose has perplexed scholars for centuries. Footnote to that, one excellent example of the void left by the apostasy and the need for a prophet is Valerie Abrahamson's essay on the Orante and the goddess in the Roman catacombs for Journal of Higher Criticism, Spring 2002, Volume 9, Issue 1. Abrahamson is no fool, but without a prophet, all we have are faint scratches on a wall. So, the Orante pose has perplexed scholars for centuries, probably because it should be a Christian symbol, but yet somehow predates Christianity. Earnest investigations of its origin are few. No matter, here comes Joseph, casually dropping bars of gold with every footstep. Joseph inadvertently proposes an origin. He apparently won't be satisfied until each and every PhD thirsts for his blood. A careful combination of Joseph and the recent apocryphal texts will answer what the Orante is and where it started. I'm getting excited already. The first Christ. If Joseph's rituals placed the risen Lord at the center of the prayer circle, he would have nailed it. The new discoveries show that the 40-day ministry featured Christ conducting the prayer ring clearly. But not only did Joseph claim he was restoring Jesus' ritual, he claimed that Jesus was restoring Adam's ritual. The man in the center of Joseph's circle was the personage like Adam, for God made Adam just in his own image. Interesting. Sorry, I'm checking the footnotes. Let me see if there's anything else. Most of the time it's talking about, historical department, Joseph Smith papers. There's going to be quotes from Moses here in a moment. So, anyways, let me continue on. So, God made Adam just in his own image. Here is where Joseph risks alienating his friends in the Gnostic Apocrypha. Very few of the Gnostic texts have anything to say about Adam. According to Joseph, the ring prayer was exemplified by Adam and Eve, who learned their rituals straight from God. Joseph taught that Adam received revelations, commandments, and ordinances at the beginning. Oh, shoot. Now I'm rethinking certain... Dude, where one or two are gathered, I am in their midst. That's the scripture that came to mind. I know that is commonly thought of as, hey, when one or two are talking about godly things, there I am in their midst. But even with as small as one or two, is it seriously? Is it one or two, is it where two or three are gathered? I am in their midst. Ah, shoot. Sorry. When these things pop up in my head, I really want to follow them. So I apologize if it seems like I'm floundering around, which in a little bit of a way I am. But, all right, let's search. I am in their midst. Ezekiel. There I am in the midst of them. So I'm saying things incorrectly. Good thing. Okay. For where two or three are gathered together in my name, there I am in the midst of them. That's Matthew 18:20. Okay, so let's see where it's at in here. So, chapter 18, Jesus explains we are to treat our offending brethren. Okay. Little ones, sheep going after the one. Moreover, if thy brother shall trespass against thee, go and tell the fault. All right, verily I say unto you, whatsoever ye shall bind on earth shall be bound in heaven. Whatsoever ye loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. This is Matthew 18:18. So he's talking about sealing power. Again, I say unto you that if two of you shall agree on earth as touching anything that they shall ask, it shall be done for them of my Father which is in heaven. For where two or three are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them. Ooh. Then came Peter unto him and said, Lord, how oft shall my brother sin against me, and I forgive him? To 7 times? And he says, to 770 times. Wait a minute. This is interesting. Okay, sorry this came to mind, and I know it's off the book, but the reason why this came to mind, and now this is even more interesting, is, so in verse 18, he's talking about sealing power, because whatsoever ye shall bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatsoever ye shall loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. And again I say unto you that if two of you shall agree on earth as touching anything that they shall ask, it shall be done for them of my Father which is in heaven. For where two or three are gathered together in my name, there I am in the midst of them. Most people just take verse 20 and talk about, yeah, if we're teaching or preaching or talking about Jesus Christ in his name, well, he's going to be with us, right? That's all together before a paragraph. And the paragraph starts with, if thy brother shall trespass against thee, go and tell him his fault between thee and him alone. And then if he repents, you've gained a brother. If he doesn't hear you, then take thee one or two more, that in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word may be established, which again, we often use in all sorts of different ways. But this is all about, hey, you're confronting somebody about the problems they're causing. And if he shall neglect to hear him, tell it to the church. And if he neglect to hear the church, let him be put as a heathen man and a publican, basically put him outside. And verily I say unto you, whatsoever. So all of this is like talking about being united, right? And if you're not able to figure out how have you offended somebody, or let's overcome your offenses, then he just out of the blue says, what you bound on earth, you'll bound in heaven, and what you'll loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. And if 2 of you agree to touching anything and you ask God, it'll be done. For where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, I'm in the midst of them. Then the next paragraph immediately comes back to, Peter said, well, how often if they sin against me, shall I forgive him? 7 till 7 times? No, not in 70 times 7, Just keep forgiving him. That's an entire paragraph on its own. Then a new paragraph comes. Therefore the kingdom of heaven is likened unto a certain king, which take account of his servants. And then he gives the parable of the one who owed, 10,000 talents, and then threw his brother in there for like 1 talent or, a paltry amount. And then the king is like, why did you do that? Here you screw up all the time, and yet you want to take your brother to task? Come on. So that's really interesting. We're talking about forgiving your brother, being united, being joined together, and I'm in the midst of them. Dude, I'm telling you, this book is changing my DNA yet again. This is what it does to you. It changes your whole perspective, and suddenly you're seeing clearly things that were there all along that you had no idea, that you're just like taking, little phrase here that's really good, little phrase here that's really good. With out of the mouths of 2 or 3 witnesses, every word shall be established. We should probably have context for that as we're reading it. I'm just saying. Holy cow. All right, there's that little gem of an aside that, wow, okay. All right. All right, so we're back. The Apocrypha don't talk about Adam, but Joseph says it's Adam. The Gnostics say that it's Jesus, but he was made in the very image of him. So anyways, according to Joseph, the ring prayer was exemplified by Adam and Eve, who learned their rituals straight from God. Joseph taught that Adam received revelations, commandments, and ordinances at the beginning. In the revelation concerning Adam, Joseph writes that Adam and Eve heard the voice of the Lord from the way toward the Garden of Eden, speaking unto them, and they saw him not, for they were shut out from his presence. The Lord gave unto them commandments, that they should worship the Lord their God, by making an offering unto the Lord. Adam and Eve were obedient to the commandments, and began offering sacrifices unto the Lord. Later on we read, thus all things were confirmed unto Adam by an holy ordinance. This is Moses chapter 5 from the Pearl of Great Price. His holy sacrifice ordinance began with Adam, so says Joseph. In addition to ordinances, Joseph revealed that Adam and Eve also received instruction. Sorry, I'm just looking at the footnotes real quick. Joseph Smith papers, we've got stuff from Genesis, we got Pistis Sophia, Caphilia Testamentum. Yeah, just all quotes. And then next page is all apocryphal quotes. All right, so then I can read all the way through. All right. So they received instruction. Jesus' epic sermon on the 40 days will be detailed in a coming chapter. Is there any basis for this? The Bible contains no such story. In the traditional Genesis, once Adam and Eve are kicked out, they're on their own. There's no further instruction or anything. The Lord's next utterance is to warn and curse Cain. Then skip 1,600 years to the Great Deluge, because how boring, right? In Genesis, there's no record of the Lord's speaking from the garden at all, let alone talking about mysteries and rituals. At least, no record in the traditional canon. It says is the traditional canon, but it's a tiny typo. Discovered in 1773 and translated into English in 1896, the Pistis Sophia recounts a story just like Joseph's. In the Pistis Sophia, before the risen Lord assures his disciples that they will find the mysteries which I spake out of the tree of gnosis, knowledge, and out of the tree of life in the paradise of Adam. Wait a minute. Discovered in 1773, translated to English, Pistis Sophia, story just like Joseph's. In the Pistis Sophia, before the risen Lord assures his disciples that they will find the mysteries which I spake out of the tree of gnosis or knowledge, and out of the tree of life in the paradise of Adam, to repeat. During the 40 days, the risen Lord told his disciples that the secret rituals were first given to Adam as spoken by God out of the garden. Frankly, yes, this is really, really interesting, but also, I'm sorry, the literal phrases which he used in the quote, you'll find the mysteries which I spoke out of the tree of knowledge, gnosis, knowledge, and out of the tree of life. So I spake to them out of both of those trees. Sorry, I'm trying to absorb something. There's a vague understanding at the end of my brain fog here, and it's making me wonder. I've often wondered, what is it that the tree of knowledge actually represents? Some people, like, if you've listened to Hayden Carroll's channel, the one where he's like at a university sitting down and talking with people, you get a lot of people with strange ideas, and yet at the same time I understand why they get into it, because Adam and Eve aren't having children before the Garden of Eden, and so some people's beliefs are that the tree of knowledge of good and evil has everything to do with sex and intimacy, but at the same time, there's nothing that really supports that along the lines of words in scriptures anywhere about that. I remember in Gems of Genesis, it's talking about how Adam and Eve had no concept of how to use their bodies for intimacy until they're literally taught or other stuff, and there's examples of that in Apocrypha, but it just doesn't have to do with the tree of knowledge and good and evil. That's like, hey, just this is how it's done, or at least that's, if it wasn't in those, if it wasn't in that book, it was in the discussions that he had on Ward Radio or something. But to me, when I sit here and think about Jesus Christ speaking out of the tree of knowledge and the tree of life, it makes me wonder. I really wonder if the tree of knowledge is literally knowledge about something. And okay, we've got symbols of trees in really interesting places here. Like I say, this is all just foggy on the edge of my mind, because we've got a tree of knowledge of good and evil, we've got the tree of life, and we talk about the cross as being a tree. And we see that, when Jesus Christ was nailed to that tree in one of the four Gospels, it mentions the cross as a tree. And which one? Is it all one tree? Or is it two trees? And why is it two trees? Which one would be the cross? I would think that the cross, or the tree that is like a cross, would be the tree of life, because that allows for us to return into the presence of God, and it allows us to be resurrected. I would assume that the tree of life is symbolized by an olive tree, which makes me wonder if it grows in something like a cross, or if just, I doubt olive wood would have been used for a cross. I really doubt that. But wow. So what is the tree? What is this symbol of the tree of knowledge of good and evil? If he's speaking out of it to both of them, is it the knowledge of sacrifice? Is it the knowledge of life and death? What kind of knowledge is it that makes it so, all right, you know, if you are partaking of this fruit, of this tree, I really do think there's a lot of symbology in it. And I'm trying to figure out, because the story itself sounds reasonable enough from a physicality standpoint, is what I mean. The fact that you can go to a tree, take its fruit, pluck it off, eat it, and by eating it, there's some sort of change, because we've always had this concept of what you eat, you kind of become like, you know, and this is why we have this sacred eating of things, which we do every Sunday. And heck, there's been people in my comments that talk about, oh, it's cannibalistic, it's evil. I'm like, really? It's meant to be symbolic in many ways, and for good reason. And so the root is, most of the time when I think about these very physical actions that speak to us very plainly in a physical sense, are often meant to just hit you in the gut with information if you understand it. But the problem is if you don't understand it, because you don't have the proper image of what the tree of knowledge is talking about. What is that tree? What is that symbol? What does that tree look like? Like, that's a very physical thing. Like, the idea of a cross literally being a tree was always a very foreign concept to me. But yet, that's exactly how it's described at times in one of the Gospels. And yet, here in the Apocrypha, it was dropped here in this book that the cross is like a tree. And if the tree looked like a cross in the Garden of Eden, you know, I never had that. I've always envisioned, you know, you have one tree over here, it's like a fruit tree, and the other tree over here, it's like a shining fruit tree. But what if it was? What if symbolically it was literally supposed to be a tree? Now, look at the menorah that they describe in the Deuteronomy, wherever Deuteronomy, Numbers, wherever they're describing making the stuff for the temple in Moses' time. It's meant to be like an almond or olive tree, and it's got a central stalk and branches that go outward, and then you have the places for oil at the top of it so that it can be lit. It's very, very much like a cross, if you think about it, just saying. And if that's the case, then what visually are we missing for the tree of knowledge? What is it? That's what I'm wondering. That's the crux. That's the thing that is shrouded in mist for me. Because if the tree of life is going to be the cross, what is the tree of knowledge of good and evil? And if we know that, then we will understand, well, yeah, okay, that does change you. And it changes you in a fundamental way, that you can't just sit there and you have to go and experience something. You have to experience life. All right. There you go. Now you've got what's going on in my head about all this. This is really amazing stuff. Discovered in 1773, translated into English in 1896, the Pista Sophia, you will find the mysteries which I spake out of the tree of knowledge, gnosis, and out of the tree of life in the paradise of Adam. So, if he's speaking out of each tree, this means that these rituals that he is giving his apostles have to do with both of them. Because why talk about speaking out of one tree or the other at all when giving this information? But if he's speaking out of both of them, it means he is giving the information that comes from the tree of knowledge, and he's also giving the information about the tree of life. So, what parts came from the tree of knowledge? Does that help us understand what that tree of knowledge is then? Whew. So, Jonah Barnes just says, hey, see, they were given by Adam, spoken by God out of the garden. All right, in 1929, the Kephalaia text was discovered, showing the risen Lord teaching the strange mysteries, which he said are the mystery, again, remember, mystery is also ordinance, so, are the mystery of the first man Adam. Nice. The Testamentum Adami, from the Ethiopic records, even records some of the words Adam heard floating in from paradise. I am God who made thee to go forth from the garden. I am God who made thee to go forth from the garden of joy into the earth. The Manichaean texts also remember Adam. In one curious discovery from Ibn al-Nadim, we find a description of Jesus appearing to Adam. Then Jesus came and spoke to the one who had been born, who was Adam, and explained to him about the gardens of paradise, the deities, Gehenna, the Satan's earth, Satan's with an S, the Satan's earth, heaven, sun, and moon. This instruction about the garden is taking place after the fall. Jehovah is explaining that the order of creation to the fallen Adam. Joseph's hype crew is all in agreement. Only the traditional canon has a giant hole from the fall to Cain. In the revelation concerning Adam, given by Joseph in 1830, we read that Adam and Eve made sacrifices, presumably at an altar. Then Satan came among them, saying, I am also a son of God. Moses 5:13. This spiritual assault by Satan is exactly what later discoveries depict. In several of the rediscovered Adam and Eve legends, there is a scene in which Adam and Eve construct a booth or an altar in order to offer prayer of repentance. One Armenian account records Satan approaching and feigned sympathy. Why are you sad? Satan comes a meddlin, as always, pretending to be friendly when he is not. The Old Slavonic describes Adam and Eve resorting to secret tokens in order to distinguish between friend and foe. An Egyptian version of the story tells that Satan knew that a secret token, and Satan knew the secret token, and thus tricked Eve out of her prayer. Really? That's Egyptian life. Interesting. The Slavonic, however, says Satan failed to test the test of the secret token, and Eve perceived that he was the devil and answered him nothing. So Adam and Eve built an altar to offer sacrifices, and Satan tried to infiltrate, but couldn't give the secret tokens necessary. None of this is in the traditional canon. It is this combat with Satan that prompts the use of the first Orante. Adam and Eve desperately employ a pure praise that they remembered from when they were in the garden. More than once, Eve got up, spread her hands toward God, appealing to him for mercy. This is all like coming from Egyptian life and the Slavonic stuff. So this is all, that's why I'm just reading through. Or in the Slavonic, spread out her hands to heaven in prayer and bent her knees to the earth and worshiped the Lord and gave him thanks. Notice the mentions of Eucharistus, or giving thanks. Elsewhere, Adam and Eve cried and spread their hands before God. And again, Adam spread his hands before God, beseeching him. When our first parents tried to drive Satan away from them, they had to spread their hands before God, praying and begging him. The Egyptian life document describes that Adam was then offering on the altar and had begun to pray with his hands spread before God. Adam, who was also standing and praying, when he spread his hands before God, beseeching and entreating him with tears when God sent his word to Adam. You see this depiction still in Hollywood, funny enough. Think of all the times you have, what is it, natives worshiping some sort of deity, how they, oh God, where is it? Just remember how people like bow down to the person and spread their arms forward and things like that, and them waving themselves towards the person. There's vestiges of this kind of that kind of thing. You'll see it in like King Kong's Coming. You'll see it in, God, what are those places? It makes me wonder if, so, shoot, now I'm sitting here thinking about, I'm also thinking about Japanese apology posture. Like when you are horrifically, deeply sorry, you're like on hands and knees, and you're on your knees and you're kind of bowing your head so low it's touching the ground, but your hands are far apart enough that it is almost like you're in a push-up. That's a stretch on that one for sure. But yeah, it's easy to see the vestiges of that kind of thing in the world. This is amazing. After Adam, Seth preserved the Orante and went up to the altar, spread his hands unto God, and sought deliverance. Seth's successor, Jared, also spread his hands and prayed for deliverance from Satan, who then fled with his companions, for they could not abide in a place of prayer. These are all quotes that come from Second Egyptian Life, Bartholomew, Apocalypse of Abraham. We'll have Exodus, Bartholomew, and Testament of Job. That way I can keep just reading. Jared did so, standing in the midst of the children of Cain. Recall that Mary did just this when conducting the apostles through the Eucharist dance. Mary stood up before them and spread out her hands towards heaven and began to speak. That's Bartholomew. Traces of the Orante are sprinkled through other texts. The apocryphal Apocalypse of Abraham describes Abraham's visit by an angel who says, "Look round," at the angels standing by while Abraham attended the altar upon the mountain. Wow. From Exodus, Moses conducts a similar Orante when he stands on top of the hill with the rod of God in his hand. Aaron and Hur stayed up his hand, the one on one side and the other on the other side, so that Israel prevailed in their battle against the Amalekites. This scene is oddly similar to Mary's prayer circle in the Gospel of Bartholomew, when the circle of the apostles sat on either side of Mary, raised her up, and propped her up while she spread out her hands towards the heaven, and spoke ineffable things. The Testament of Job records when Job says a prayer and gives praise to God, whilst Job's friends were holding up my arms from both sides. Wow. Okay, that Testament of Job. That's the apocryphal one, not actually in Job. He's got a picture of a man adorned in sacred robes employing the Orante posture, figure 9078, praying on papyrus, according to Cabral and Leclerc Monumenta Ecclesiastica Liturgica, Volume 1, Part 2, from 1913. Really? Sorry, here it is. Here's the picture. And now, if that seems like an annoyingly long list of spreading forth hands in prayer, Dr. Henry Leclerc shares your frustration. He complains that the gesture of hands raised towards heaven is so frequent in the early Christian period that it is impossible and moreover superfluous to undertake the statistics of the gesture. Researchers find it everywhere now, but Joseph, in his Apocrypha Fellows, it was begun with Adam at the altar outside of paradise, while the gesture of the Christian Orante passed down for centuries. The exact manner of the outstretched hands was hard to convey in writing, which few Christians attempted in the first place. Were the hands in front and back, together, or supine? Today we can find the Orante pose in early Christian artwork. The dark catacombs of Rome have desperate drawings scrawled upon them, showing the earliest Christian praying at altars with hands upstretched in the Orante pose. But the Orante is far more than just praying with upstretched hands. The Orante is the conscious impersonation of the crucified Christ. Modern researchers now admit what Latter-day Saint templegoers have long known, that the Orante gesture may have been a conscious imitation of the crucifixion. That quote comes from Nibley in 1979, in which the victim stretches forth thy hands, as if upon the cross. Tertullian told fellow Christians to raise our hands, not ostentatiously, but arms outstretched in the form of a cross. The Gospel of Philip refers to Jesus. Now, that's interesting. Raise our hands not ostentatiously, not like way out there, I assume, but arms outstretched in the form of a cross. The Gospel of Philip refers to Jesus as one who is spread out. Philip also paints a picture of mankind under the wings of the cross and under its arms. This also goes back into, I wonder if there's some wordplay with as a hen gathereth her chicks under her wings, because I'm wondering if that's what it's alluding to as well by having the picture depicting people under a cross from what he's describing here. Tertullian indicates this was an imitation of the crucifixion. For our part, we not only raise our hands, we also open them, and thus imitating the Lord's passion. Here's another picture. The Orante posture of early Christian prayer is so common among early Christian texts as to be impossible to calculate. See also the strange open garment worn by the worshiper as the Holy Ghost descends upon him in the form of a dove. Figure above, The Art of the Faithful Heart, a comparison of classical Christian and Islamic art traditions by David A. Ross, 8th of February, 2024, Sage Journals, Volume 47, Issue 3. Interesting. There's the picture. Good heavens, this is amazing stuff. A pseudographical work called Pseudo Ambrose tells early Christians to receive the sacrament of that cross because Christ hung on the cross and his body was pierced with nails. Therefore, when thou art crucified, thou cleavest to Christ, thou cleavest to the nails of our Lord Jesus Christ. Let the nail of Christ hold thee fast. But admitting this gesture derives from the cross complicates the dating models worshipped by academia. How could Abraham, Moses, Aaron, and David all be aware of the cross before Christ? Joseph Smith Jr. is the only one with the answer. The gospel has been preached since the beginning, and the first Orante was performed by Adam. And Adam's Orante was more than just upstretched hands. Adam went full method actor. Oh, man. The Psalms of Our Father. Oh, joy. I am so excited by all this. All right. I'm trying to figure out. Can I keep going? Can I make it? Okay. All right. One more section. The next section after that's pretty long. Oh, this is so good. All right. The Psalm of Our Father. In the revelation concerning Adam, God instructs Adam and Eve to offer the firstlings of their flocks upon the altar. The very next verse, the angel comes questioning Adam, "Why dost thou offer sacrifices unto the Lord?" It's Moses 5:6, if you couldn't tell. It seems a bit odd that seconds ago God taught sacrifices, but now an angel is bewildered by it. If the Lord really did instruct and teach Adam from the garden, did no one tell the angel? Seems weird, right? Why is the angel so startled? I never thought he was startled. I think he was checking their, do you know why you're doing this kind of stuff. But according to Joseph and several apocryphal texts, this first offering was not a firstling of the flock. In Egyptian life, Adam went all the way and spilled his own blood upon the altar. And Adam cried as he bled, "Look at our blood which is offered on these stones, and accept it at our hands, like the praise we used to sing to you at first when in the garden." The blood at their hands drips upon their altar. So just let me reread that if you missed it. Adam cried as he bled, "Look at our blood which is offered on these stones, and accept it at our hands, like the praise we used to sing to you at first when in the garden." The blood at their hands drips upon the altar as they reenact the pure praises from their prayers back in the sanctuary of Eden. This visceral act, piercing his hands to bleeding and raising them in pure praise, is what shocks the heavens. Quote, this is from Egyptian Life. "Then the merciful God, good and lover of men, looked at Adam and Eve and at their blood, which they had held up as an offering to him, without an order from him for so doing." They just did this innocently themselves. "But he wondered at them and accepted their offerings." Unquote. Dang! According to Joseph, this is where the angel of the Lord barges in with wide eyes. Whoa. The heavenly messenger then recognizes that this thing is a similitude of the sacrifice of the only begotten of the Father, which is full of grace and truth. We're back at Moses 7. Like clockwork, the Egyptian does the exact same thing. However, instead of an angel of the Lord, the Egyptian, meaning the Egyptian life apocryphal text, the Egyptian does the exact same thing. However, instead of an angel of the Lord, the Egyptian depicts the Word of God, with a capital W, Word of God, explaining to Adam how this sacrifice is a mirror of the Messiah's future sacrifice. This is again, quote from Egyptian Life. Quote, "Then came the Word of God to Adam and said to him, O Adam, as you have shed your blood, so will I shed my own blood when I become flesh of your descendants. As you died, O Adam, so also will I die. And as you built an altar, so also will I make for you an altar of the earth. And as you offered your blood on it, so also will I offer my blood on an altar on the earth. And as you sued for forgiveness through that blood, so also will I make my blood forgiveness of sins and erase transgressions of it in it." Dang. Wow. This gives new meaning to the verse Paul wrote, "For as in Adam all die, even so in Christ shall all be made alive." Yeah. Adam pierced himself and raised his hands above his head like Jesus, and shed blood upon the altar in similitude of the crucifixion. His head, like Jesus, Adam pierced himself and raised his hands above his head like Jesus, and shed blood upon the altar in similitude of the crucifixion, preaching to Adam's wayward children. Enoch invoked the same imagery when he asked the Lord, "When shall the blood of the righteous be shed?" That's Moses 7:45. Wow. According to the Coptic Kephaliah text, the risen Lord gathered his disciples around and taught them the first form of worship. Like literally, that's the quotation, is the first form of worship. This special kind of worship was the worship with which the first man worshipped, when he bent his knees in worship. Adam was engaging in the holiest and bloodiest of method acting. According to Joseph and the apocryphal accounts, 1. Adam and Eve were expelled. 2. God taught Adam and Eve how to conduct sacrifices. 3. Adam and Eve built an altar/booth. 4. Adam and Eve employed the Orante pose to plead with God for forgiveness. 5. Adam and Eve shed blood from their hands upon the altar. 6. God or an angel, or both, wondered at this, or asked Adam why. 7. God... Oh, interesting. Okay. Wondered at this, or asked why. Sorry, the phrase wondered is throughout the scriptures, and so if it means questioning instead of being in awe, that would mean there's a lot to look back on. God or an angel then explains this was a similitude of the crucifixion of the only begotten of the Father. Triangulating these several witnesses, it appears that Adam and Eve reenacting the crucifixion and the bloods from their hands was the blood for the first sacrifice. It's exhausting. Sorry. It's exhausting how much winning Joseph can do in just a few verses. Wow. Okay, I need to pause. I really need to pause. Oh, wait. Ha ha ha. There's... Okay. Oh, I have to stop. Okay. I want to keep going if you can't tell. Because then it says Jesus impersonates Adam is the next section. Oh, my goodness. One eternal round. Wow. Okay. So this is starting to explain a lot more. Like, I got the concept that temple things were instituted at the beginning. What I'm trying to understand is Moses' time period and the sacrifices like that. Because I always tied the sacrifice that Adam and Eve were doing were very close to the sacrifice that Moses' temple was doing. And that's actually probably very true, obviously, now. And there's lots of modern, what I would call modern temple imagery, obviously, in Psalms. And then also, as he pointed out, with Moses having his arms in the Orante, or held up position, by Aaron and, who was the other person? So that Israel would prevail. That this is really old stuff. And if that's the case, then what the part that I'm trying to understand here is I'm trying to understand the animal sacrifice part. Because obviously the animal sacrifice was supposed to be in similitude of... That's what I always thought when I was young. When I was just reading the texts and stuff from the Pearl of Great Price, when Adam and Eve were offering sacrifices of the first of their flocks and of their fields, because they did both. You get the idea that to me, it was like, hey, they're offering the first of the things. It has to be pure. You can see all the, you can get from the seminary manuals that, yeah, see, they were sacrificing the first of these flocks, or et cetera, like this, and that was a type of Christ. And yet, when you get into Deuteronomy, they're talking about sacrificing more than just the lamb and the first of the flock of the lambs and the sheep, etc. They're talking about, you sacrifice a bull, you sacrifice this pigeon, you sacrifice this, you sacrifice that. It's I'm trying to I'm trying to figure out, and I wonder how many of the typifications of the animals are meant to be for something in particular. Again, if this is stuff that is supposed to be extremely visual and quite representative of stuff, just like I am sitting here thinking that if the tree of life can be represented by a cross-like tree, such as one that would have light coming from it, Kaf Kaf menorah, that's in the old Mosaic temple, or a shining tree, like a shining bush, that, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay. And the problem, the good thing and the bad thing is, the good thing, it hits home when you understand what you're looking at. The problem is if you actually don't have the right visualization, the description of the visualization is not the same, which means that we have literally, like, Moses talking to a burning bush or a glowing bush, especially if you have the Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston. If you're missing that it's supposed to be in the shape of a cross, or if you miss that, it would be ridiculous to entire sections of humanity, because for generations we've lost the visual cue we're supposed to have. They will just literally have a bush that's glowing or a bush that's on fire. And then what about the tree of knowledge? What is the visual representation that's there? It's just the tree of knowledge is all that it's called. And then it has fruit of that tree. Great. So we've got this visualization. What's the true visualization behind it? What is that knowledge that took you from a place of innocence to a place of, oh, now you know that this good and now you know good and evil. Now you know what's right and wrong. Now you know this kind of thing and that kind of thing. There is so much to this that is just fascinating. And so I'm sitting here trying to figure out, what is the visualization? What was the preparation of these animals for sacrifice in the Mosaic law, in the Mosaic temple? Because to me, it sounds like they had a lot, if not most, of temple understanding in place. And if Moses can't give the higher law, if Moses is really upset, he's like, all right, we're starting from the most basic stuff. Here's the 10 Commandments to kind of put things right. And we're going to get something smaller here. Like, what is the visualization of the preparation of this? I think they lost the plot. I think that's exactly what occurred. But why would they still have parts of this in Psalms then? If they totally lost the plot, like after the apostasy, and it's just really lost information, then why? See, this is the stuff that's coming to mind, and I'm going to have to wrestle with. I've got to figure out, okay, was the full understanding of the temple kept secret from the text of the Old Testament, or was it ripped out? I suspect it was ripped out in many ways. In the same way, if that's the case, then what does that mean about the animal sacrifices that are described in Deuteronomy, in Leviticus, etc.? What was going on there that probably communicated more about coming to Christ? And how much was it that Moses withheld, but how much was still given? I think that between obedience and sacrifice, they were trying to teach them that. You get that from Saul. So you have obedience, you have sacrifice. What parts would they know that they need to follow to bring them to Christ with how Moses had things set up? All right, so I'm left with those two big questions. Right now, I'm left with, how were the sacrifices performed for animals in Moses' day? What was their visualizations that, oh God, now I need to go back and read those chapters again. What am I missing about that? How much have they been altered? What is it that Moses withheld if they couldn't accept the higher law? What if Moses was trying to give them the higher law, everything about the temple from Adam through Jesus Christ through today, but they wouldn't have it? They didn't want it. And if that's the case, and he only gave them the lesser laws, I think it would be obedience and sacrifice. You have to have obedience and sacrifice, because that's really plain throughout the Old Testament, including when Saul was being chided by Samuel when he's like, well, I saved these animals for a sacrifice. And he's like, he doesn't want your sacrifice. He wants your obedience. Don't you get it? You got to get obedience first and then sacrifice. So, wow. Okay. There's my homework. God, how am I going to follow up on that? Followed by which I'm still left with a blank hole through the mists, peering into the Garden of Eden. What is the visualization of the tree of knowledge? What was that knowledge that made it so Adam and Eve knew right from wrong? If the tree of life is typified by the cross and a glowing tree and a tree shaped like a cross, and it's just all combined into one there, what is the visualization for the tree of life, or the tree of knowledge of good and evil? I'll have to leave it right there. That is a very, very good question. What is the visualization of the knowledge of good and evil? Wow. Okay. May the Spirit of God guide you in what you're doing. May your prayers be more earnest and thankful. Yeah. Wow. I know. Wow. There's just so much I need to go through again. I've got a lot of reading to do. I've got a lot of pondering to do, but I literally need to make time for it somehow. Well, may God's Spirit be with you and guide you in all you do. We'll see you.